Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson. I've asked Keren Paterson, who is the Managing Director of Trigg Minerals, to come back and have a chat with me as we come into 2023. Why? Because they've got some news that's going to start coming out. We're going to talk about what's happening for 2023. But first up, welcome back, Keren. Good to see you.
Thank you, Kerry. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Well, can we say that now? It's February. No, we're not allowed to say that anymore.
Okay.
But it's the first time I've seen you, so you're allowed to say it. Keren, just first up, you are a potash explorer over in Western Australia.
Yes.
Give us an update as to what you achieved in 2022 before we go into the outlook for 23.
Well, 2022 was all about getting out and doing a lot more field work for us. So we had done all the very early exploration work. A lot of that was helicopter supported with specialists on lake rigs. But now that we've made Discovery of the Year, as we received in November last year from Australian Mining Prospect Awards, we put a lot of tracks in and a lot of infrastructure so that we can bring in more conventional rigs to continue the work that we're doing on the resource.
And what sort of work are you continuing to do? You've put the infrastructure in. What's the work? I want to get a vision, if you like, of what the work is, what you've been doing to lead up to.
So doing the drillings, we did an aircore program, put in the monitoring bores for pump testing in the future. But those monitoring bores, we were able to put a geophysical tool down them and get some unrivaled data in what our aquifers look like. We've also been looking at what is happening there with the peers when it comes to the processing side of things and the challenges that they're experiencing. So we've been looking and searching for some innovative solutions to get more control over the salting process. So we're looking forward to informing the market on all the things that we're doing last year, because that's all coming together in a couple of announcements now.
Okay, so there are announcements about how important. This is a new industry, really, for Australia, isn't it? And you just spoke about some technology that you're using. How important is it to look at your peers, take best practice from them, or also not take worst practice from them that helps Trigg Minerals going forward? Do you actually look at what they're doing, and does that help you navigate the path forward for Trigg?
Absolutely. One of our core values here is to learn. When I started out in my career a few decades ago, now one of my early mentors said to me that I can learn how to do things and also how not to do things. And by being a second mover in this industry, we can watch and learn and see what lessons are being learned by those to go before us. So the commissioning phase is where all of the bits come to light. And we absolutely analyse the reports from our peers and really try to understand where their challenges are and look for ways to solve for those issues long before we're investing that level of capital.
So what are some of the challenges and some of the issues that you've seen that you won't be using in Trigg? I don't want you to go into minute detail, but just give us an idea of what you've seen.
Well, the traditional process pathway for a project like this is to evaporate it, because the minerals are already dissolved in brine. It's a pumping project, so making sure we really understand the aquifer, how the aquifer is going to behave, because it's not a static ore body like if we were mining a metal. And understanding the salting process, it's a chemistry process. Yes, we use the sun, which makes it look quite simple, but what's going on inside the evaporation ponds is incredibly important to understand from a chemistry process. It can be split up into two processes. The first part is precipitating the sodium chloride, halite or table salt. That's a really robust salt crystal and an easy process to do, and we can just pretty much pump it into the ponds and let it do its magic. But once the brine is reduced down to about 1/10 of the volume, it becomes incredibly thick and viscous. And how it evaporates becomes very temperamental in some ways. It needs to be managed very, very closely. And that's the secondary evaporation phase. And that's what we're seeing that we can perhaps have greater impact on by looking at that part of the process pathway and seeing if we can put it into a more of a controlled environment so that we can speed up the process and return and bring production forward in that, but also get more control over it so we've got more confidence in regular production build a more robust project, ultimately return the value to shareholders by doing that.
I said before, look, it's a new industry for Australia, but China produces 2/3 of potash, I think. Is that right?
They do, of sulphate of potash, 2/3 of the world's sulphate of potash. Yep.
Okay. Are there other places around the world that are doing the sort of processing that you are wanting to do? In other words, can you learn from outside of Australia?
Absolutely. If we're talking about lithium brines, for example, it's quite a similar process on the evaporation style. There's also other projects globally. There's a project in Utah in America that has been producing sulphate of potash from those brines for many decades now. So it's a very niche part of the mining sector, but there is experience and knowledge in how to do it on what we're calling the base case, being that full evaporation process. And we're looking at adopting new technology, new innovation that's tried in other industries to redeploy that into potash and potentially at Lake Throssell.
I guess what I'm getting to is, why is it so challenging? You said it's a chemical process. Why is it so challenging? Is it because you're trying new things with this project?
It's challenging because salt crystallizes in different ways at different temperatures at different densities.
Oh, okay.
So if we think about, so we're trying to do a big chemistry project in the open atmosphere where the temperature changes all the time. So how do we get that level of equilibrium in that in the traditional pathway of using the sun to provide the energy to do the work? So that's where I talk about being quite complex, because there's this three-phase salting diagram, and it very much is where the chemists come into the picture, is really understanding how this goes about, because we need to produce the right salts from the evaporation process to go into the process plant, or the process plant's not going to be able to turn it into sulphate of potash.
All right. So right now, last year, because we were talking about what you got done last year, you put in some infrastructure, you've been doing some drilling.
Yep.
Talk to us about what's happening in 2023, because I think what we would like to know as people looking in this sector is, give us the next 3 key things that Trigg will be doing in 2023, I guess, to add value to the project.
Yep. So the drilling that we did last year will increase the confidence in the resource, and that's incredibly important because we need to be able to do that to ultimately convert it to an ore reserve. And that's where we really make a big difference in the confidence of the engineering studies, as once we get to that ore reserve state. Mm-hmm. To do that, we did the air core, which then guided where we put the big holes, so then we can put the BMR tool down there. And that information has just been released, the results of the BMR, and also the assay results of the brine.
Now, and hang on, before you go on, BMR, and I talked to you off camera, so I know what this is. But other people don't. It's a borehole magnetic resonance.
Correct.
So in layman's terms, what does that mean?
So it's taken a really detailed picture of our aquifers, looking inside the aquifers, and it's telling us what the porosity looks like, the specific yield, and the connectivity or the conductivity of the water. So ultimately it's telling us how much water we've got there, how much we can pump out, and how quickly we can pump it out.
And is that good? Does that go under that sort of new technology helping you to not fast track, that doesn't sound like the right word, but allow you to understand what it is you've got your hands on faster?
Yeah, it's about really getting a good grasp on what our aquifer looks like and how it's going to behave when we're in production. And again, all of these things that we're doing, it's about de-risking it so that when we do come to build it and commission it, we've got a lot more confidence and things working, and we're not going blind as such. So, everyone's been doing a lot of work in this sector now for a number of years to really understand things, but there's technology now that we can use to have a look at it in another way, and that's what we've done with the BMR.
Okay, I interrupted you because the question was the 3 key things that you'll be doing in 2023 to add that value for shareholders.
Yeah, so, well, the first bit, that was the first bit actually. So we've just announced that as 2023, the results of that work. the assay results. Those assay results are also confirming just how consistent the grade of our brine is throughout the deposit. So all of the numbers are coming back within a very, very close range. And that gives us a lot of confidence around the grade that we have. All of that work will then go into a resource update, and we are looking forward to bringing that to the market very soon. And we've also been doing a lot of work on various pathways in regards to innovation on that second part of the process pathway. Some of that work has been good, some not so good, but that's part of science and experimenting. And we've got some results that we're all hanging on at the moment because we're very excited that there may be a solution to that challenge. So we're looking forward to testing that and bringing the news to the market when it's ready for publication.
When will it be ready for publication?
I can't tell you that because we still need to receive the results. We need to have a look at it.
So it's not imminent, but it's coming. It'll be sometime. It's part of 2023.
Yes. And then if that is the case, a big part of 2023 will be to work that up so that we can take that through to a pre-feasibility study.
All right. Let's go a bit corporate if we could now, Keren, because I want to know what's the cash situation in the bank at the moment and where are you going to be putting those funds?
So 3.1 in the bank, and we put those funds as much as we can into the ground and into the science and the technology and de-risking this project. But also, we need to be mindful, this is very early stage. Discovery of the year means it's a new discovery. It's a greenfields discovery. It's a new industry. It's a new process. We need to make sure that we do it right. And that's not to say that we're going to take forever to do that. We just need to be very efficient with our capital. The investor market isn't necessarily excited about potash at the moment because there is a big watch and wait as we watch and wait for those projects in commissioning to deliver. And we're using our time wisely and our funds wisely so that we can advance the project as much as possible, as efficiently as we can.
And what we said earlier was talking about food security. And here in Australia, we're very comfortable. There's always food on the shelves. How important do you think is food security globally? Because potash plays into that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think we are immensely privileged here in Australia in regards to not only the abundance of food that we have, but the quality of food as well. And the costs, yes, we're all feeling cost of living prices go up when we're talking about inflation at 7 to 8%. But imagine if we're talking about 490%. Food prices are going up, have gone up 5 times in some countries in the last 12 months.
Is that right?
So Iceberg Gate of 2022 in Australia absolutely pales in comparison to some of the issues that other people are experiencing. So we need to look at food supply chains, particularly COP27 started to take notice of that as well, and food and agriculture has become part of the overarching words coming out of COP27. It is becoming much more of an issue globally, food insecurity, as opposed to food security.
China has recently announced, after the past few years that there's been some challenges with COVID and the total shutdown, but they're reopening now. Does that impact at all on the market? And look, by the way, as Keren said a moment ago, this is at discovery phase, ladies and gentlemen. So we're not looking at revenue. We're not looking sales revenue. We're not looking down the barrel of production because we're still in discovery mode. And lots of people turn around and say, oh, when's production going to happen? And when's the revenue going to start? These things take a long time to get through. And especially, I guess, Keren's got a mining engineer background. So she's very process driven and understands what it's going to take to get this project down there. But you've got to do the work to ensure that further down the line, it is going to get into production. And Keren, I think as a mining engineer, you wouldn't be there if you didn't think this was getting turned into a mine.
No, for me, exploration discovery is all about finding that something that is economic to build that is going to have an impact. And you're quite right, Kerry. We listed just over 3 years ago, and we hadn't set foot on this project at that time. So all of this has happened through COVID and
Yeah, good point.
the aftermath. You know, we are still experiencing the impact of COVID. And you know, this discovery is all about that long-term food security. Our scoping study is talking about a top 10 production rate globally, lowest cost quartile producer for an initial mine life of 21 years. It is an advanced discovery.
Yeah, I'd say it's an advanced discovery, but how do you get the noise that's out there to focus on what you're doing? Because for me, there's a lot of talk about critical minerals out there and government support for the critical mineral side of things, and that talks about, you know, electric vehicles and the like. Well, guess what? You can't drive an electric vehicle if you don't have any food. So my question to you is, does the Australian government look at this and say, well, actually, we need to make sure that this project and others go ahead because this is critical to food security for Australia?
We do hope so. There is a review underway in regards to the critical minerals list, and there's also a review underway for the agricultural supply chain. So we have been communicating with the government on that to see if we can get that level of recognition for something that's so vital for our food security and our food future.
So there is things happening in the background. All right.
Yep.
Why should shareholders hold your stock, Keren? Real direct question for you.
From an Australian perspective, we import all of this product. Our agricultural supply chain, our agricultural future is dependent on imports of potash. Yet we could generate enough to supply all of Australian agriculture here with these projects, this new industry that we're developing, and then become a net exporter and a global player when it comes to sulphate of potash. There is a huge opportunity for us to do that and to partner with our trade partners to secure our food future. And this is a project on Ngarrindjara lands that will employ people for, as I said, initial mine life of 21 years. We're looking at an employment of over 100 people, and it will generate something like $100 million a year free cash based on a price assumption in our scoping study of $550 a tonne, and the price these days is closer to $1,000 a tonne.
Wow, but you've also had some inflation around as well, so maybe one will negate the other. Do you know what I mean? So as you go to get this into production, there could be some other challenges around that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely been price inflation on the capital cost side. Also, probably in the product side, we've also seen massive supply disruption with Russia and Belarus producing a large proportion of the muriate, which is a necessary input for the secondary process for sulphate of potash. And that secondary process is highly energy consuming. So the energy prices in Europe as well, where it's largely manufactured, also in China, you know, the cost of producing sulphate of potash has also gone up substantially.
All right, so
that secondary process.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of talk at the moment on the sort of the lithium story, and I said before, no point driving an electric vehicle if you can't feed yourself. Do you think that the potash sector is fully understood by the market? Because I'll be blunt, your share price has been pretty ordinary of late. And do you think that's because the market doesn't fully understand potash or likes the shiny things like the lithiums and the uraniums and the golds?
I suppose I can't speak for shareholders so much other than myself. I am a large shareholder of Trigg. I believe in the importance of potash for the long term. I believe in building a new industry for Australia to do this. I think we are seeing a lot of let's sit and wait and watch the commissioning projects and see how they evolve. But at the end of the day, we still need this if we want to see the food on the supermarket shelves, especially in the fruit and veggie part of it.
All right, Keren. Well, we're running out of time. So what I want to ask you right now is what I always do, 3 reasons why people should be sitting up and taking notice of Trigg Minerals right now.
This is a big discovery, in a very recent greenfields discovery with a really robust scoping study, and we are building on that in the coming years. The work on the process technology, we're an innovative company. We are looking at how we can get smarter, better, more efficient with our cost of capital. And who doesn't want a good hot cup of coffee in the morning? Who doesn't want a glass of wine in the evening and some nuts and some fruit and veggies on the way through? And if we don't produce potash and sulphate of potash, particularly somewhere in the world, we are not going to have those things on our table.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It is actually about food security, and I don't think people realise the challenges behind that, because all we see is food on the supermarket shelf. So Trigg Minerals, the ASX code is TMG. Go to Trigg. What's the website now, Keren?
Trigg.com.au.
Love that. Trigg.com.au. I'm glad I asked it, because I would have said Trigg Minerals. Trigg.com.au. What I would encourage you to do is to go to the website. Why? It's actually got a wealth of information on there so that you can get up to speed as to why this sector, this new sector using new technology, is going to be so important to the future of Australia's food supply. In the meantime, Keren Paterson, thank you so much for joining me on Small Caps.
Thank you, Keren.